No more wars. Under Trump, we will have no more wars. He said he will start a war. I'm not going to start a war. I'm going to stop wars. Biden started wars because he was stupid. I will bring the world glorious new peace. I will prevent World War III. I'm the only one that's going to do it. But I'm proud to be the first president in decades who started no new wars.
Since Donald Trump returned to the presidency in 2025, the United States has carried out several military conflicts, wars, or major combat operations around the world. Some are full wars, while others are military campaigns or strikes. Here are the main ones reported by major sources. The U.S. entered since 2025. 1. Iran War, 2026 present. 2026 Iran War. This is the largest conflict involving the United States since Trump returned to office. The U.S. and Israel launched major strikes on Iranian nuclear and military targets. Hundreds of targets were hit, including missile bases and command centers. Iran retaliated with missile and drone attacks on U.S. bases in the Middle East. This conflict is still ongoing and has involved tens of thousands of troops and large air campaigns. 2. Yemen War, Red Sea Conflict, 2025. March-May 2025. United States attacks in Yemen. The U.S. launched Operation Rough Rider, a large bombing campaign against the Houthi movement in Yemen. Over 1,000 targets were struck. The campaign was meant to stop attacks on international shipping in the Red Sea. 3. Venezuela, Caribbean Drug War Operations, 2025 present. Operation Southern Spear. The U.S. began military strikes against alleged narco-terrorist networks tied to Venezuela. Airstrikes and naval operations targeted vessels and later land targets. U.S. forces even conducted a raid that resulted in the capture of Nicolas Maduro. Some analysts describe this as a hybrid war on drugs and regime change operation. Number 4, Syria Air War, 2025 present. Operation Hawkeye Strike. After an ISIS attack killed U.S. personnel, the U.S. launched major retaliatory strikes in Syria. Over 70 ISIS targets were hit across the country. The campaign continued into 2026 with additional strikes. Number 5, Somalia Anti-ISIS Campaign, 2025. United States intervention in Somalia. The U.S. carried out airstrikes against ISIS fighters in the Puntland region. The strikes killed dozens of militants and targeted leadership figures. Number 6, West Africa Counter-Terror Strikes, Nigeria, 2025. U.S. forces conducted strikes on suspected ISIS militants in northern Nigeria. The Trump administration warned further strikes could occur if extremist violence continued. Since 2025, the United States has been involved militarily in conflicts in 1. Iran War, 2. Yemen Red Sea Houthi War, 3. Venezuela Caribbean cartel and regime conflict, 4. Syria ISIS strikes, 5. Somalia ISIS operations, 6. Nigeria counter-terror strikes. Some of these are full wars, while others are military campaigns or interventions. War, retaliation, and the limits of ceasefires. During the campaign, Donald Trump told voters that he wanted no more endless wars. That message resonated with many Americans who were tired of decades of conflict overseas. But today, tensions between the United States and Iran have raised a serious question. Can modern conflicts really be turned on and off with a ceasefire? Some critics argue that once a major power launches strikes against another country, the conflict takes on a life of its own. Governments can announce ceasefires, but that does not always mean every group involved will stop fighting. Throughout modern history, conflicts in the Middle East have often involved multiple actors: governments, militias, and ideological movements. Groups aligned with Iran have operated in places such as Yemen, Iraq, and Syria. That makes the situation more complicated than a traditional war between two nations. Supporters of strong military action say strikes are meant to deter threats and prevent larger wars. Critics warn that escalation can create long-term cycles of retaliation that last far beyond a single presidency. History has shown that when global tensions rise, Americans often worry about possible consequences at home. The memory of the September 11 attacks still shapes how many people think about national security and the risks of global conflict. The real debate facing the United States today is not only about military power, but also about strategy, diplomacy, and long-term stability. Can conflicts be contained once they start? Or do they create ripple effects that last for decades? These are the questions Americans and leaders around the world are now grappling with. No more wars, but are we already in them? During the campaign leading into the 2024 election, Donald Trump repeatedly told voters that one of his main goals was to avoid new wars. Trump often said the United States needed to focus on domestic priorities instead of foreign conflicts, and he argued that under his leadership, the world would be more stable. But now, less than 2 years into his new presidency, the United States finds itself involved in multiple military confrontations around the globe. One of the most serious flashpoints involves tensions with Iran. Military strikes and retaliation between U.S.-led forces and Iranian-aligned groups have raised fears of a broader regional war. At the same time, American forces have carried out operations against the Houthi movement in Yemen aimed at protecting shipping routes in the Red Sea. Counter-terror operations. U.S. military strikes have also continued in places like Syria and Somalia, targeting extremist groups linked to ISIS. Supporters of these actions argue that these operations are not new wars, but rather necessary security measures designed to protect American interests and prevent terrorism. The debate critics, however, say the reality looks different. They argue that when American forces are conducting airstrikes, deploying troops, and engaging hostile forces across several regions, the country is effectively involved in multiple conflicts, even if they aren't formally declared wars. The debate highlights a long-standing issue in American politics. Presidents often campaign on promises of peace and restraint, but once in office, global events and security threats can pull the United States back into military action. 1. The quick strike and ceasefire strategy. Leaders sometimes believe a limited strike can deter a larger war. The idea is, launch a strong military strike, show overwhelming power, force the other side to back down, then negotiate a ceasefire. Several presidents have used this strategy in the past, including actions in the Middle East. Supporters argue it prevents bigger wars by showing strength early. In a confrontation with Iran, some strategists believe strikes are meant to destroy military capabilities or deter future attacks rather than start a long war. Iran doesn't fight wars the same way the United States does. Instead, analysts often say it relies on indirect or asymmetric warfare, using allied groups across the region. Groups aligned with Iran operate in Lebanon, Iraq, Syria, Yemen. Because of that network, retaliation may not always happen in one direct battlefield. 3. Why conflicts sometimes last decades. History shows that some geopolitical conflicts can last generations, especially when they involve ideology, religion, or national pride. Examples include the conflict following the September 11 attacks, the Cold War after World War II. These conflicts weren't always constant fighting, but they created long periods of tension and proxy conflicts. 4. Could violence reach the United States? Security experts take that risk seriously, but they also note that the United States has dramatically expanded its counterterrorism, intelligence, and homeland security systems since 2001. Agencies like Department of Homeland Security and Federal Bureau of Investigation spend enormous resources trying to prevent attacks before they happen. So while tensions abroad can increase risk, there are layers of defense designed to prevent attacks on U.S. soil. The real strategic question. The debate isn't only about one president or one conflict. The bigger question analysts ask is, can military power stabilize the world, or does it sometimes create new cycles of retaliation? Different experts answer that question very differently. Here's the latest verified information on China and its relationship with Iran's nuclear program and the broader conflict, based on recent reporting. Al Jazeera. What's happening between China and Iran now? China is speaking out diplomatically. China has publicly criticized U.S. and Israeli attacks on Iran, calling for an end to military operations and a return to negotiation on the Iran nuclear issue. Beijing has insisted that diplomacy and negotiation, not force, should resolve Iran's nuclear situation. So far, China's official messaging is focused on reducing the conflict and restarting talks, not expanding it. China's official position on nuclear weapons. China has historically supported the Non-Proliferation Treaty, NPT, and says it does not and will not help other countries, including Iran, to develop nuclear weapons. Chinese spokespeople emphasize that Iran's nuclear program, under its leadership, should remain peaceful and monitored by the International Atomic Energy Agency. IAEA. So officially, China denies supporting nuclear weapons development and wants Iran's program to stay civil, energy, medical, etc., rather than military. Material support versus strategic backing. While China isn't reported to be helping Iran build nuclear weapons, China has sold Iran missiles and defense systems, like anti-ship weapons, which could improve Iran's regional military capability. China is also connected to Iran through broader strategic partnerships, BRICS, energy deals, infrastructure, and may offer diplomatic backing. Experts describe Beijing's support as strategic and opportunistic, not a full military alliance. So China's assistance tends to be arms and economic ties, not nuclear weapons development. What experts are saying: China wants regional stability and sees diplomacy as the best way to keep that. Beijing respects Iran's right to peaceful nuclear energy and insists dialogue, not force, is the long-term solution. Analysts say China has not publicly agreed to help Iran get nuclear bombs, and doing so would violate global non-proliferation agreements. Bottom line: China is not publicly helping Iran develop nuclear weapons. Beijing is advocating for negotiations instead of conflict. China does provide military equipment and diplomatic support, but that's different from assisting with nuclear weapons. Some analysts warn that conflict escalation could indirectly increase nuclear interest regionally, but China's official stance is aligned with non-proliferation. There's no credible evidence that China is helping Iran build nuclear bombs. According to official statements and international reporting, China says it supports diplomacy and peace, respects Iran's right to peaceful nuclear energy, and condemns unilateral military actions. China has sold conventional weapons and supports closer political ties with Tehran, but it also publicly states it opposes nuclear weapons proliferation. Thanks for watching Politics Global One, where we break down world politics, global conflicts, and the history shaping today's headlines. If you want more deep dives like this, like the video, share it with friends and family. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell. Because on Politics Global One, we connect the past, the present, and the power shaping our world. Stay informed and stay curious.